So that's just one example of a type of case that sometimes takes a while.
Let's say you have one judge and you get constant complaints about them. I mean, does that not concern you? Is that, as chairman of judiciary for 6 years, I got all of those complaints.
Yes, ma'am.
I still get those complaints. I have a big file that was just mailed to me in the office right now. And it concerns me when I know one judge that I constantly get complaints, and, you know, it's affecting people's lives. You know, well, I won't say any more than that.
I understand.
But it really concerns me, and that's why I thought it would give the board more credibility when I proposed legislation to put, you know, more just everyday people on the board. And I think we have to give people credit. I think they have to understand the difference in just they don't like the decision of the judge, and whether it gets to the credibility of the judge or not. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of issues sometimes because they think, well, you've just got their peers judging them, and they're not going to be too hard on them, or they're not going to want to punish them. And I just thought it would give more credibility if you had more everyday people out there on the board judging these judges.
I understand. Well, you know, people think for some reason the judges want to protect their own. One of the reasons I do this, and I've been doing this for 9 years now, is that I hate judges who are unethical, because I'm very proud of being a judge. And I've been a judge for over a quarter of a century, and I don't want other people to disparage the judiciary and be unethical. I want to get rid of those folks as fast as I can. And it does us no good to have some judge, particularly election time, to have 2 or 3 judges under indictment, or, you know, and as an incumbent judge, I have to be ashamed of part of that. And so there's a perception that we're trying to help each other and keep unethical judges I can understand why the public might have that perception, but it's not true, because we don't want to disparage our profession. And if we have a judge, and we did have a judge one time who repeatedly was reversed on appeal, and it is unethical not to be learned in the law. And as for that judge's case, that judge had to be disciplined and stop. But often we have judges who are in particular divorce judges, probate judges, people who get a lot of flack from unhappy people. A lot of criminal court judges, get a complaint, well, he didn't give me probation, he must have been bribed. There's no ethics problem there. And so the issue is, if there's a judge that's always getting a lot of complaints, we will address that. What are you doing? Even if the judge is not doing anything unethical, they might be doing something that's giving the appearance that they're being unethical. And we need to stop that as well, because we shouldn't even do anything that appears to be improper. So I would agree. Now, we may have some elected official who is more colorful than others and draw more complaints, but as long as they're not doing anything unethical, we will sure talk to that judge, and I'll say, Judge, you might need to tone down your rhetoric a little. You don't have to be that, when you fuss at someone, you don't have to fuss at them so hard. Have a better judicial demeanor. But unless they're doing anything unethical, there's really not any way we can address that. And I can understand your concerns, particularly with the people in that judge's district.
But would you agree that to wait longer than a year for the board to rule on an ethics complaint is that out of the ordinary?
It's out of the ordinary unless you have certain types of cases where it takes a while to figure out if the judge is doing something wrong or not. There may be 2 judges that rule the same way on things, but one of them does it in such a way that it makes other people feel resentful, and they may file a lot of complaints. And the question is, it's like, for a while, for several years, I would put people on probation, but I would chew them out before I put them on probation, because when I started putting someone on probation, they'd say, well, that judge doesn't care, and they'd go off and smoke marijuana or whatever. But if I chewed them out some, they'd say, that judge, he'll put me in jail. Well, but if I start chewing them out too much, it's being disrespectful to them as members of the public. So where do I draw the line? And there are some judges that draw more complaints than others, not because they're unethical, but because of the way they do business. And we try to help them. But if a complaint is just sitting there, somebody's working on it. Either that we're trying to see if that judge is going to change or something. A lot of times we can't tell the complainant what is going on. We want the judge to open up to us. We find, y'all may not believe this, but elected officials sometimes have egos. And it's hard for a judge who's been elected in their district to be told by somebody else what to do. And so sometimes we have to work on a judge and say, you don't understand, you need to do things a little differently. Not because they're unethical, but they're drawing complaints. And a lot of times it's better for a judge to tell them that than for someone else to tell them that. Because judges, I guess more probably than anybody else, a lot of times judges have egos because they go in the courtroom and everybody stands up when they come in the room. You know, I remember I'd been a judge for about 4 or 5 months, and I came home, and my wife didn't stand up when I came in the den. And it just kind of, you know, all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, what am I thinking? I'm not a judge at home. I mean, but it's serious. We call it gavelitis. Judge starts thinking they're more important than, you know, they say it's in my courtroom, and it's not your courtroom. It's the public's courtroom. And so sometimes we have to work on those, and sometimes that takes a little while. We don't want to dismiss a complaint on a judge that's not done anything unethical, but is giving that appearance unless we can try to work on that judge. And sometimes that takes a little time. What we sure don't do is, Tim doesn't say, I'm going to let this sit for 6 months and not do anything on it, because they work. I get calls Sunday afternoon from him. They work all the time. So it's not that we don't do anything or that we don't want to do anything. We're trying to figure out the best way to handle the issue, if that makes sense. And it's frustrating because other people want to know what's going on, and we can't really tell them about that. And that's why I get the mail and the calls that I get from complainants and people like that. What's going on? And we can't really talk to them about it.
What if someone files a complaint? Meanwhile, that judge is out of office. The complaint is dismissed, but then they take another position in the judiciary. What happens in that case?
Oh, what we have done is, and I can say this, we have had, over the years, many judges resign rather than have formal charges placed on them. As soon as they resign, we have no jurisdiction. And what I do is I write a letter to the judge and we put it in their file. We keep the complaint and we say, we're dismissing this complaint, but as soon as you apply for an appointed position as a judge or as soon as you file for election as a judge, we will immediately the next day file formal proceedings. And they know that. And we have several judges now that are in retired mode, and we just wait. And if they file for election, if they asked for an appointed position, if they apply to an appointment, we will immediately file right then. We won't wait till they become a judge. We'll file right then. So they know that that's there. We don't sweep anything under the rug. The reason that judge resigned, and the only reason we're not going forward is because there's nothing we can do. Once they've resigned, the worst thing we can do is remove from office, and they've removed themselves. And it saved a lot of money in having hearings in it. You know, frankly, having an impeachment hearing on a judge would not make the judiciary more respected at all.
Or they choose not to run for re-election, and then later they take a position. Would that?
If they choose not to run for re-election, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. In 2014, I can think right now in my head of 2 judges that did not run again because they knew if they did, we would reinstitute we would file formal charges.
So,
and I might say, Senator, we also had a judge that ran for a position after resigning as a judge that was not a judicial position. So we've still lost jurisdiction. I have a feeling I know what you're talking about. I don't know, but because I got a lot of calls about this.
Yeah.
We had a judge that resigned. Obviously, we lose jurisdiction. That judge understood that if they were to be appointed or elected to another judicial position, then that judge, we would reopen that complaint. And you know, if we already found probable cause, of course, it would go forward to hearing. If we haven't, it would still be investigated. Yeah. If a judge is elected or appointed to a non-judicial position, it may sound like a judicial position, you know, court clerk or, you know, dog catcher in chief or something. But
right.
If it's not actually a judicial position under the canons, we've lost jurisdiction.
But and keeping in mind, if it's a crime, if it's not something they're doing as a judge, unethical, if it's a crime, we're still going to turn everything we have over to the authorities. We're, just because they resigned doesn't mean that just means we're not going to file formal charges, but we have a duty if a judge has committed a crime to turn that over to the authorities for prosecution.
Thank you, gentlemen. I would like to say as chair that these are all good, excellent comments and good questions, but we are in a sunset hearing, and I'm not sure all of these questions or comments are germane at this particular time. But if we could, I'd like to move forward. I have one last person to recognize at a later time, or maybe correspondence.
Right after the hearing,
question, and appreciate that. We're going to have to move forward because of time. We have one person on the comment list, Natasha Pavlovich. If you wouldn't mind, just come to the podium over here. And gentlemen, if you'll stay where you are, you may want to respond. Please state your name and who you're with. And you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me the time today. My name is Natasha Pavlovich, and I'm here on behalf of several people of Williamson County and several people who have made complaints against judges. And in particular, I'm going to mention the judge's name. It's Juvenile Hall, Judge Sharon Guffee. I've worked with, also I'm here on behalf of the attorney, Connie Reguli. And I've worked with Miss Reguli, and she is aware of the many complaints made against Judge Sharon Guffee. The complaints were made also on the Board of Commission of the city. I personally spoke at the Williamson County meeting. Nothing was done. Nobody called me. Nothing has been done since. Now, I want to specify that why I'm here today, before even having the honor of hearing Judge Kraft, is I'm here to ask you and to tell the commission that the judges judging other judges has been ineffective, and the process needs to be done with. I'm asking you to get rid of the Board of Judicial Conduct and to go back to the Constitution, which allows for a removal of a judge on 10 days' notice under Article 6 of the Constitution. And all this involves is the process of taking a step to prepare documents. You give it to the judge, tell him what the grounds are. You call a session, and then you vote for it, and you have a solution. This is quick, it's constitutional, and that's my point today. But I want to address some of the things that I heard from Judge Kraft today, that these complaints are almost like frivolous, that, that you're disgruntled because of something the judge said or intimidated. I'm talking about several people in Williamson County who have been unjust, and I'm going to talk about myself really quick. I'm talking about unconstitutional rulings that have been written on an order, and unconstitutional rulings by a judge that I have on videotape from the court proceedings, and nothing has been addressed at this judge regarding this judge. I'm talking about unconstitutional of vacating me out of my own property without due process and without jurisdiction, without any concern for my child. And I never knew what happened, and she just vacated me out of my house without due process. I'm an American citizen, and I believe that due process is my right. She also wrote down on my parenting plan, quote unquote, mother is not to speak Serbian to child in front of non-speakers in the presence of non-speakers. And furthermore, mother is to assure that the child does not speak to mother in the presence of non-speakers. My child is bilingual. I'm very proud of that, and I think that most people would be. Her first language is Serbian, Serbo-Croatian, like the President of the United States' son speaks the same language. Quote unquote was an order on my parenting plan. This is unconstitutional. It's against my daughter's right for freedom of speech, freedom of rights. Furthermore, she also threatened my parental rights for absolutely no reason. And this is not a disgruntled mother talking today. I'm talking on behalf of at least 6 other people who have made complaints against this judge, and she's still ruling. And this shows a pattern of having a pattern of unconstitutional, unethical rulings for the last 5 years. And I'd like to bring this to your attention, and I'm very happy to bring it personally to the attention of the man in charge here. But I also want you to understand, and I plead with you to consider getting rid of the Judicial Board of Misconduct and instigating the rule of the Constitution, the 10-day notice for the Article 6 under the Constitution.
Thank you, Ms. Pavlovich. You've exactly 5 minutes. You did very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
If I can make a 30-second response.
Of course. Just a second. We have a comment from Representative Stewart.
Thank you for testifying. It's always difficult, I think, for citizens. Have you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but have you yourself filed a complaint with this body, the Office of Judicial Conduct?
No, I have not, but the others have.
Let me just suggest to you, because it does sound like you have some grievances that are important, and you do, as an American citizen, have absolute right to due process, no question. I would suggest that you consider filing a formal complaint, because the problem is whether it's the correct process or not, and you've raised a question about the process, but I think that's the process that's in place. And so I would suggest you use that process first and see what happens, and then you'll be in a, rather than address kind of our entire system, I would consider doing that, because that's the process in place. Let me just say, the reason I think, and I don't speak for this body, just for myself, the reason it's not very practical to say we should go back to the constitutional method of expelling a judge with the entire legislative body, it's the same, it's because judges are put into place through a very elaborate process, either through election or other constitutional processes. And so, like, I as a legislator am going to be very hesitant to expel a person that the people have elected or that's been appointed through a proper process. So only if somebody was convicted of a felony. You know, we heard today about a judge that was taking money under false pretenses. Okay, well, that's an easy one. But I think you'd find actually that you'd get less discipline, because someone like me, I'll just speak for myself, I would almost never expel a judge unless there was evidence of a crime and there'd been an actual proceeding in a court in which evidence had been presented. Because you talk about these 6 people, the problem for me is I just don't know until there's been an adjudication by a body, there's been a record made. I don't know whether their grievances are proper or improper, or and I understand they, you know, a lot of times people have very legitimate problems and they're right, but the way you bring that forward is through the process we have. I actually think this body will provide more discipline, not less. You may disagree with me, but even if you disagree with me, I would consider filing a complaint, because then you'll be able to see whether this body responds in a way that you think is appropriate. I think at this point, since they don't have a complaint from you, at least with respect to the issues you raised with respect to your own situation, I think they need to be given an opportunity to go through the process that exists, because this body has meted out some very severe discipline, as we heard today, to members of the judiciary. So it certainly is willing to exercise its power in certain instances. Anyway, I throw that out to you just as a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. The judge was appointed. She wasn't elected. And also, I probably went a little too far with my personal issues, but I am here, again, on behalf of Attorney Connie Reguli, who's a big attorney and advocate, and I come to make the statement about Article 6 on her behalf.
Any other
Well, and I
questions?
would say, just one follow-up question.
Yes.
If there's an attorney that wants to come and speak, then it really, and I will tell you, I'm an attorney, that attorney needs to come and speak directly,
Yeah,
okay?
she's very outspoken, but today she was unable, so I'm here for her.
But I actually listened much more carefully to your own personal situation, and that is important, and it is significant, and your point about due process is absolutely true. But this is the process that we have. I would urge you to consider giving it a try, and then you may receive a result that you find is just or unjust, but at least at that point you will have felt that there was a process, because there is a process in place, and it's not, we don't take these matters, these are very weighty matters, as you point out. And so I want you to understand.
I'll have 6 complaints written out, and you can meet with us Thursday, and I can hand them to you, or you can meet with all of us and write them down with us.
I believe you're right. Thank you very much. We will turn to Judge Kraft and let you respond, Judge.
Very quick response. Of the 405 complaints filed this last fiscal year, 319 of them in our statistics were for the judge didn't follow the law. We have 29 full-time appellate judges that make those decisions. We do not. I cannot change the ruling of a judge.